Sex and the City obviously ran from 1998 to 2004. Then there have been 2 feature movies in addition to all the other things that you've done, one of which we're going to get to here shortly. But aside from your character, Carrie Bradshaw, aside from the travails of your relationships with Mr. Big, and by the way, I think you should have stayed with Aiden. He was always my favorite.
It's controversial.
Right?
I mean,
he was such a good guy.
No, he was a lovely person, both as a fictional character and the fellow who played him.
Right.
No, we all loved him. We all loved him.
So aside from that relationship
yes.
With Mr. Big and Aiden and the others, the relationship with shoes
yes.
was obviously another defining trait.
yes.
Actually, talk about that a little bit. Was that always in the conception of the character? I mean, obviously, style and fashion was central to who she was.
You know, it's actually a good question because the source material obviously was Candace Bushnell's articles, her columns in The Observer, and which she put into book form, which Darren Stark very cleverly purchased, which he turned into the television series. And I think I recall correctly that shoes played a role in it. I'm not certain to the degree that it became such a sort of part of Carrie's personality, or rather that the fevered relationship that Carrie had with shoes was to the extreme in its original source, material, and that the provenance of all that, I think, is more over time, and seeing that in some ways it became a very good device for, strangely enough, talking about larger adult themes.
Right.
It, I thought, was very smartly woven into one might describe as shortcomings, this sort of passion and lack of rational purchase.
Yeah, I used that a lot as my excuse for going out and buying things that I couldn't afford during that period. So thank you very much for that.
Pleasure.
So after the show ended and you've done the movies now, I know people must have approached you numerous times to say, Sarah Jessica Parker, shoes, what can we do? There's got to be some deal here, right? But you always said no.
I did. I mean, I was flattered to be asked to have the conversation. And, the shoe category was very interesting to me. I felt that I had certainly spent a lot of time in them and was sort of intimate with the article, and but
the ups, the downs, the flaws.
Yes, and I feel like I had worn shoes from over a century ago. I'd worn thrift store shoes that were barely held together with tape and whatever else we could do. I'd worn shoes that were on the runway in Paris, 8 and 12 hours before. So, and everything in between. It was an education, honestly, and a real discipline, which is the making of a shoe is something quite real. But when people approached me, they were mostly interested or entirely interested in creating mass collections, and that would obviously mean producing shoes in China, and the price point would be very low and appealing, and of course it was always very lucrative to ponder, but it felt on principle wrong. My agents were like, what part of this is uninteresting to you? And I sat down at lunch one day with 2 very successful businesswomen who had built their own businesses, and they said to me, well, what is stopping you? And I said, I just don't feel that it's an honorable relationship, that if I produce a shoe in China, I don't think, in all good conscience, that I can offer this to to the women who I've established a relationship with. And they said, well, what would you want to do? How would you want to do it? And I said, of course, my dream is to produce a shoe line with the great George Malkemus III, who I knew fairly well, who had, in my mind, had been the leader in his category, been the CEO of Manolo Blahnik for, at that point, about 30-some years. He had conducted his business and his life in a way that was incredibly admirable. And so they said, have you ever asked him? I was like, he's otherwise engaged, he's busy. But they convinced me to, and I walked home and I walked straight to a hardline telephone and I picked it up and I called and I said, George, it's Sarah Jessica, would you ever consider producing a shoe line with me?
And I said, come to my office tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning.
And so we did.
And that's how it started.
Yeah, and that's how.
So did you know each other from the Sex and the City days, or had you met?
Even before Sex and the City, we knew each other going back to California.
Yeah, I was
encounter
living...
once, many years ago. And of course, we sort of stayed in touch, but until that day, and it was remarkable because at the same time, I'd always wanted to do a line of shoes that I knew could be made in Italy, and Sarah Jessica wanted to have her shoes made in Italy. That could be much more affordable. I had been doing shoes, as the CEO of Manolo Blahnik USA for well over 30 years at that point, and they were $1,000 shoes. And I knew from my days in the factories that you could make a shoe out of Italy, beautifully made, for less money. And so Sarah Jessica, when we sat down, it was remarkable how much she knew about shoes. And it was remarkable how we came to New York roughly at the same time. So she's much younger, but we came about 1977. And New York in 1977 was shoe heaven. I mean, it still is shoe heaven, but then you had names, and she knew every name. She knew Charles Jourdan and Maud Frison and Walter Steiger and names that probably most of you don't even know, but those names mattered in the shoe business to her, and they mattered to me. And that sort of cemented the relationship and how she knew the construction of a shoe, and that basically the rubber tip on the bottom of a high heel shouldn't move when you touch the bottom of it, and that the sole should feel a certain way. And quite honestly, even the leather should smell a certain way.
Yeah.
Although in 1977, I believe you were wearing like a certain pair of other kinds of shoes on Broadway as Annie, right?
I think she was younger than I am, Mark.
I was, but it was an exciting time in the shoe business in New York, and there were a lot of beautiful small shoe boutiques, and I would, rather than take the crosstown bus, I was a young girl and I was going back and forth to work and to school, and I would literally stand at the windows of some of these shops and gaze in absolute wonder. I mean, it never occurred to me that I might ever have a pair. It seemed far out of my league, but I was satisfied in just the experience of.
Right.
So those points of references were the same for both of us, actually.
100%.
The single sole, the old Charles Jourdan, that massive, exquisite palette of color, and just the construction and the sourcing of materials, and the quality of the shoe, the way it felt, the way your foot felt the actual cement, which I know sounds unappetizing and unappealing, but is actually kind of what you want in a shoe.
Right.
So it was enormously fortunate that he took my call and that we were able to launch the business the way that we were wanting to most and most excited about.
And right, and as you said, this is not a licensing deal. This is not just your name. This is a business that the two of you
We own it.
own and run. Right. And meanwhile, you have been the president, right, of Manolo Blahnik USA.
Up until the end of this year,
until the end of this year, right?
At the end of this year, that relationship will end. But
you and probably Carrie Bradshaw put Manolo Blahnik on the map in the U.S.
Well, certainly Sarah Jessica Parker and Carrie Bradshaw, and you can't have a woman who. You mentioned the name Manolo Blahnik, who doesn't automatically say Sarah Jessica Parker and Carrie Bradshaw, and can talk about episodes in that show when Manolo's shoes were so wonderfully featured by Sarah Jessica. But the wonderful thing about that day was also that to understand that she understands the design of shoes, and that she and I designed these shoes. So it's our baby, and it's a wonderful baby that we do week after week in the offices together and in the factories together, and with our partners, and in the sense of we have two other young women who work for us, and the four of us really it's our company. And I think the wonderful thing about sharing that in the sense of the price point is the way that we can sort of feature our shoes at $350 to $500 is because it's a small team.
Which is still a big number. I want to make clear that that's still a significant amount of
And
money.
she always points it out. So, I mean, to me, the thing when she said, you bet George, $350 is a lot of money to a lot of women, that's why the quality has to be the quality it is. That basically a woman, and that's why it's basically that she came up with this wonderful term, evergreen, which is like the classic traditional part of our shoe line that doesn't change. So a woman who buys our fawn pump, which is our classic pump, today can buy it for $355, and then next year hopefully buy it for $355 or $60, and know that that's going to be in her wardrobe. And there's a sense of a small investment for her, and that matters a lot to Sarah Jessica.
Right. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about how you established established what your market would be, where you were going to be in this very crowded market, a market that and a business that's changed obviously a lot since the days of the TV series, with online retailing, the apocalypse and retail, closing of Barney's, which is sort of unimaginable. But so how did you decide where you were going to enter the market with your shoes, and how did you figure that out?
Well, we obviously we did our due diligence, and George obviously is very familiar with the market and has wonderful long relationship with the retailers, and we sort of confirmed what we thought about where our space might be. What is the white space that allows for this particular brand? And we discovered that there really wasn't this kind of shoe with these sort of pillars that were most important to us, that didn't really exist actually, that made in Italy, this price point, the commitment to a single sole and color as a neutral. And so we worked really hard to offer up our first collection of samples from Italy. We found a retailer that we were excited about that wanted to partner with us exclusively for the first year of the launch. And they too believed in what we hoped to achieve, the endeavor. Right, I would say.
That was 5 years
but
ago.
the point, the most difficult thing about coming up with the price point was that basically you really had to be very disciplined. And the thing that I learned very early on with Sarah Jessica is she's very frugally minded, as I am, and that's very important to the beginning of a business, because we could have taken a big showroom on Fifth Avenue and spent a great deal of money decorating the showroom and had a team and hired a designer, and instead we do all that ourselves. So basically you can share that with the woman who appreciates what we do. I mean, you might say consumer, I prefer the woman who appreciates what we do, but you can share that price point because you're very diligent and you've done your work prior to bringing the shoe to the market. Our shoes are made in factories that have labels much bigger and much more expensive than ours, and I understand why, because they spend a great deal of money on a designer and on, again, showrooms and suites and grand hotels. And Sarah Jessica and I don't run our business that way. We couldn't afford to run our business that way, but also we choose to embrace a woman who's not being embraced from a shoe in Italy, a wonderfully made, handcrafted shoe by artisans of 3 generations and 4 generations. And that matters to us, and we are so grateful to our partner, Ricardo, and what he does with his team.
Yeah.
So that was 5 years ago when you launched. Now you're at Bloomingdale's, Saks, Neiman Marcus, Amazon, Zappos. You just launched your own digital online.
We have 2 standalone stores in New York.
And I was going to, I mean, 2 in New York as well as
others across. We have some standalone stores internationally. We're in international markets as well, and then we're in some small businesses across the country. And we just launched our e-commerce just this past June after, a lot of thought and consideration. It's a huge financial investment. It's, everybody knows in this room, filled with risk. We weren't ready to do it. We had lots of people telling us, why aren't you there yet? And we wanted to be there. But it took us, we felt we were being really prudent and thoughtful about what that meant and when we were ready. And it's been, so far, it's been really, really good for us. And of course, we want it to grow.
Right.
But that's one of the things I learned from Sarah Jessica early on with retail partnerships. A retail partner often has a buyer who has a limited budget. So basically, when they would come and work the showroom with Sarah Jessica and with me, and Sarah Jessica would point to a wonderful fuchsia shoe and a purple shoe and a green shoe, and they would say, they're wonderful, they're wonderful, they're wonderful. Then the buy would come back and they'd be brown, black, navy. And Sarah Jessica would say, what happened? Yeah. And they would say, well, we only have a limited budget and we really can only buy brown, black, and navy shoes. And then her store wasn't being told to the woman out there. So basically the woman didn't see what we were all about.
It was a very good lesson for us, and I think it's just in general one of those sort of experiences you have to have where you really fight for a brand as you see it. And everybody's intent were like, dream big, do it. Yes, show us the satin fuchsia shoes. Show us the asparagus colored Napa. Show us the Concord grape, beautiful suede shoe, which we believed were just as much a neutral as a black or a brown or a cordovan or a navy, and that women actually wanted those shoes. And so what we started doing was just moving those elsewhere in the place that we could control it. And as I shared with you, what we started doing with women when they walked in to our store or any place where I could be on the floor with them and work with them, and they would say, oh my God, I love that purple shoe, but I'm a corporate lawyer, I work in finance, or I'm a school teacher, I could never wear that. Then I would say to them from the beginning, and I say it every day, I would say, do any of your male colleagues wear a purple tie? Do any of your male colleagues wear a gingham checked pocket square? Well, yes, of course. I said, do you think of them any less as an authority, as your equal? Do you think they're any less smart, capable? Is there anything about that purple tie that somehow diminishes them in your eye? This is your purple tie. And it's a neutral. And they were like, oh my God, I can't. Of course I can wear that shoe in court. Of course I can stand in front of my colleagues. Of course I can be a teacher with a shoe that has some sparkle. Right. It's what I want to say about myself anyway. So we just needed to do it so that the retail partners would see what we were doing, and then they would say like, oh my God, we want a satin pink shoe that they had previously said, no woman's going to wear that. That's a special occasion. We're like, it's not a special occasion shoe. It's a shoe that women want to wear all the time.
But I had been in this business for over 30 years, and I had never heard it put that way. But a guy wears a purple tie, a guy wears a gingham pocket square, and I just thought, she is so smart, and she is.
Although it does depend on the purple tie, I have to say.
It does, but maybe that's not always the best example.
No,
but
well, look at your socks today.
Right.
They're distracting me. I'm just kidding.
So have the retail partners changed the way that they approach your line now?
Okay.
Okay.
And one other example that I thought was very instructive for us and very informative. We went to the Middle East. We have we have a store there
in Dubai,
and all these images were coming back, and of course they ordered satins in the Pantone Dream, like the
really?
Satins, the rich saturated colors, because a lot of women, for cultural reasons, are covered. So the thing that they that they can show, they want it to tell a story, right? So all these images were coming back to the States from our PA that we did there, and then they were like, oh, ochre, you're right. Ochre and satin is exquisite. It is a neutral. Ochre is cocoa. It is great flannel. We're like, yes, it is. But you just have to find a way to tell your story. You just have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And you can do it with class and kindness. And somehow you can, if you have the courage, you can kind of get.
You mentioned, when we were chatting to prepare for this, you mentioned an example from someone that you admired, that you had worked with many years ago, Laura Mercier, right? What was the lesson that you learned? What was the lesson you took away from the way she approached her business?
Well, she and I were friends for forever, and she used to do my makeup all the time, and she started this small color line, and she had no money for marketing or PR or any help, and she just hit the road. She hit the road. She was out there constantly in women's faces, on the floor, at the cosmetic counter, just on a whistle-stop tour, 200 days of the year, and which meant that I saw her far less. But I watched her build that business with nothing. Just herself, her ideas, her philosophy, her excitement and passion for what she knew she had to offer that she felt was singular. So when George and I were launching, I said, I want to take a page out of Laura's book. She built that brand that way. We have no money for marketing, no money for, PR. We can't gift people things. We can't send people stuff. We're not in a position to do so. It's just going to be us on the ground, in the store, in the face of the consumer, constantly. And that's just what we do. We answer every customer question, everything on Instagram, we answer ourselves. All of our customer service, we take enormous pride in.
And the wonderful thing was that when Sarah Jessica, when we're in our stores, and she's there as often as she can be in our stores, and the New York stores particularly, but when we travel, and she's literally, when she says she's on the floor, she's literally, putting a strap and buckling a shoe on a lady, and basically it's incredibly important to this line because it shows this woman who's followed Sarah Jessica's career some of them before Sex and the City say, but she really cares about what she's designing. She really, this is her, and the comfort level, and they will stand up and say, but these shoes are so comfortable. And Sarah Jessica will say, but let me show you why. And she'll reach into the front of the shoe where we added this little extra pad, and it makes the shoe more comfortable. And she would say to me, you know, I've worn shoes sometimes 18 hours a day, you know, and they were not comfortable. My shoes have to be comfortable. Yeah. And so we spend months and months and months with the factories making sure that the shoe is comfortable. And, you know, listen, in the world of designer shoes, that's not taken at all for granted, because basically women say, well, they're beautiful and they're sexy and they're this and they're that. I mean,
but I can't stand in them for very long.
Exactly.
At the restaurant, I'm sneaking them, you know.
Right.
But the other thing, too, about the experience of being on the floor, it's just, we love it. We love it. It's not just mercenary. We learn so much. And also, they are part of the design process. We're always thinking of, obviously, we try to design into success, but we also are constantly hearing what they need and what they want. You know, it's just an enormously important, but also joyful experience, frankly.
So this is the Year Ahead conference, right? So we look ahead to 2020. As you look at your business between, you know, online, your own brick and mortar stores, your relationships with retailers, where do you see the business going in 2020 and beyond? You know, do you think, you know, at what point does digital overtake, you know, physical store sales?
God,
have you even thought about that?
I mean, I think that so we now have a new partnership with the 555 group, some brothers, that they're amazing brothers, and we've opened in Mall of America, and we've opened in West Edmonton Mall, and we'll soon, you know, open in American Dream here in Meadowlands.
With your own store.
With our own stores. And what happens with your own stores is that basically it's the curation of Sarah Jessica Parker. So basically it's walking into a store and knowing that that could be Sarah Jessica Parker's closet in a way. I mean, it's what
it's
her
much
dream.
bigger and nicer than my closet ever was.
It's her dream of what a woman should be able to come to us and have. And our website is the same way. Those are shoes that our team with Sarah Jessica's, you know, expertise have curated. And so when you have that, you're able to show the woman out there who appreciates what you do, what you really offer. And you can't do that always with limited partnerships in retail stores.
Yeah, and I guess you know, to answer your question, sorry, is that I think what we want to do is, you know, do better where we are. You know, shore up the base of where we are and become, you know, a destination point always, a standing date, you know, that our customers come back, which is how we're growing and what we're seeing. You know, really be smart about our e-commerce. And I don't think growth, I feel like growth internally for us is really what we most need. Growth in space and retail space is both always interesting and seductive, but it's also, you know, riddled with fear and risk. And so I think we really want to grow internally. So a year from now, I hope that we're saying that our e-commerce business is, you know, better than ever, and we can count on it for X amount of dollars a day. We read our reports every single night from all of our stores, so we know our numbers. And also that we just feel that more and more people know where we are in this city, for instance, and that they count on us and have integrated us into their life in a way that is meaningful and not just folly.
But I mean, not to interrupt, but the point she made, which was miraculous to me, because I've done it in my Manolo Blahnik business for years, but when Sarah Jessica says we get a report from every store we do business with that day's sales, and comments from the staff that says, Mrs. So-and-so from Minneapolis came in and she couldn't find the Tarte, one of our wonderfully famous shoes, for us, famous shoes, in her size. And Sarah just we'll talk the next day and say, why don't they have a size 7.5? They need to have a 7.5. And we work together.
How long have they been out of the 7.5? Or, you know.
But I mean, that was remarkable to me, because I've been in this business for a long time and known a lot of famous designers who, you know, as long as they were designing, they were happy. And we should always be happy with what we do as a design team. But she cares about the woman, again, who appreciates what we do, having the size and having her needs met.
Yeah, that's not always pleasant to read the daily reports, but end-of-day reports, but it's really important, and so.
I think it's interesting that you haven't given up on malls. which a lot of stores have.
I think because of these partners, because they're doing these malls that are not, they incorporate,
Traditional mall.
Right.
amusement parks and roller coasters and water slides.
I think retail is like 40% now of these
malls.
Yes.
And incredible
They're
restaurants.
entertainment centers, not
Right.
malls,
Right.
or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So also in the year ahead, I mean, obviously you have this business, but it's not the only thing you're doing. You're just wrapping up season 3 of Divorce. You have your own book imprint, which you're also doing in terms of literary fiction, perfume, fragrances, and obviously you're producing other projects, more to come with HBO, I believe, and other
Yes.
places.
Correct.
And then also you will be going back to Broadway for the first
Yes.
time in quite a while, right? With
Yes.
and with Matthew Broderick.
That's right. That's right.
and
My husband, as of now. We've never
Wait.
done this before, so no, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no. So, no, I feel really confident that we can weather this very special experience. Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, you were on stage together many years
I came
ago.
into How to Succeed at the very end, just
Right.
for a couple of months, and
Right.
then, and that was before we were even married.
Right.
And so this will be, from scratch, as it were. It's obviously a revival, but
The Neil
yes.
Simon play.
It's Plaza Suite.
Plaza Suite.
Yeah,
Right.
directed by John Benjamin Hickey, who is currently on Broadway in The Inheritance. So he'll be taking a leave to come direct us, and we're opening out of town, just like the old days. We're opening at the Colonial in Boston, and then coming into New York, just like the 1940s. Yeah, we're really excited. Yeah, amazing
and-
people too. We've got John Lee Beatty and Jane Goodwin, like legends in their field. Yeah,
Right, and so between the two of you have 6 parts
we have 6 parts. We each play 3 parts. Yep.
of
yeah.
a married couple.
Of 3 different plays entirely.
3 different. Okay.
Yes, so
okay.
one's a married couple, one's a previous boyfriend and girlfriend, and another is a married couple. Yes.
Right. Okay, and that starts in April.
Yes.
And you're politically active as well.
Yes.
And right.
Yes, I'm an active American citizen.
So
I hope we all are.
we do. So at our Year Ahead event, we also do polls. So we have a poll that I'd like to ask on what people think should be next for Sarah Jessica
Oh,
Parker.
no.
Oh my gosh.
Like, take a break. Go away.
I think I should have asked this
Oh,
probably
God.
right
I'm
before,
scared.
right before Halloween.
Oh, God.
But the Hocus Pocus revival, which I watched again, by the
Wow.
way. Sex and the City 3, even if Kim says no.
Oh, run
That's
for
all right.
office.
Launch a
Run-
furniture line or run for office.
Oh, so
let's
wait,
see what our-
is this active now, or
Yes,
is this
our
just, are you
audience-
playing
our
games with me?
audience- Our
Well,
audience
whatever they
here-
say, I'll just do it. I'm very obedient.
I think you may be running for office. Yeah, our audience has, we have a
Sex and
phone
the
app
City's-
that allows you to vote.
Oh, this is live now?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
yeah,
Lord.
Yeah.
Bloomberg's famous for polls, right?
Well, we're famous for data.
Among many other far more important things.
You can still run for president, Sarah Jessica.
I think there's a political office in your future, apparently.
All right, well,
So-
maybe there's a position in our school district. Is
Have
that
you
what
thought
you mean?
about running for office?
No, I love being a voter. I love being an informed
And
voter.
you go out and campaign
And
for
I do.
candidates.
I work. I
right.
do whatever.
But you're not
I
gonna-
lick envelopes. I roll calls. I knock on doors. Canvass. Old school. Old school. Yeah. My son has started. He volunteered in the midterms. Last in
He's
what? He just
16.
turned 17.
17, right? Okay.
Yeah. So my
Which
daughters
is also
are.
frightening that you have a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
But okay. All right.
Well,
We're really
I'll
out
pay
of
close
time.
attention, and thank you for your thoughts, and I'll get right on all
So
of that.
wait, Sex and the City 3 ever?
If we could, I mean, Michael Patrick's the best
Right.
person, right? We need a story, and we need a gateway. What's the? I never know how to answer this question.
I know. All right. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No,
Thank
you're
you very
all right.
much,
Thank
Sarah
you,
Jessica
Mark.
Parker.
Thank
and
you.
George
Thanks so much. Thank you.